All right. Well, Julie,
70 people. Holy cow.
it's
Thank
awesome
you
and it's
so much
time.
for joining us today. And Kelsey, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the housekeeping.
Perfect. All right. So, a couple things we've got for you, just like your last session and our welcome session this morning. Please use the Q&A button to respond, to share your questions. If you would like closed captioning, make sure you enable those so you can do it. And then it is more fun to share. So when you chat, throw it to everybody. I think the initial default might be hosts and panelists. So make sure you change that so that we can all see your comments and then we can all participate together.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We had a chance to share some in the chat earlier, but let's take a moment. Has anyone had just a really fabulous experience this summer that they want to share?
Ooh, I can't wait to see what people say. What's been the best part of your summer so far, Julie?
Probably. So my kids live all over the country, and we had a family wedding, and I got to see at least a couple of them. So that was
Awesome.
probably the best.
Love it. Francine, Disneyland for the first time. That is one of my favorite places.
Hmm.
My
Reading by the
question to you
pool.
is,
Oh,
yeah, what was your favorite ride? But reading by the pool, Teresa, if you have a good book rec, send it our way. I'm always looking for one. Fishing in Alaska. That's on my, I don't
that
know
would
about
be amazing.
fishing, but I will say Alaska is on my like bucket list of places I'd like to go to.
For
Laura, a
sure.
new grandson. Gosh, so awesome. Congrats.
California Coaches Camp. Yay.
Oh, Lisa, that was a highlight for me too. Reading by the pool, enjoying time with dogs.
Hmm.
Fiona, Disneyland next week. So hopefully Francine can give you some recommendations on what rides to try next week. That's the hope. Time with dogs.
Christina, congratulations on The Graduate. That is awesome. And Kristen, yeah, just having downtime is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, to be able to
All
sleep in.
right.
Love it.
Thanks so much for sharing all. So you hear Kelsey. She is in the background, but she'll kind of man the chat and jump in whenever she feels like she has something to add. My name is Julie Minetta. As I said, I am currently living in South Bend, Indiana, but I consider Michigan home. I'm definitely a Midwest girl. I have been a TCI trainer for over 20 years. That kind of blows my mind. I don't know how that can be when I'm only 35. My day job, I have been a teacher my entire career, mostly at the elementary level, but also middle school. I've taught some college, and currently, I guess you would call my role kind of a literacy coach. So that's a little bit about me. Except that I want to say I first became acquainted with TCI way, way back when my district was looking at an adoption. And it was this is actually when TCI first came out with its elementary program. And I piloted and then became a district coach. And so much of TCI I fell in love with. But as a literacy specialist, honestly, the literacy is definitely part of what appealed to me at all grade levels. I've used it for middle school interventions because the literacy is so good. Um, I I just think there's so much to it. And so uh, talking about content literacy is definitely a passion topic of mine, and I'm excited to share it with you today. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start talking about what is content literacy and what is TCI's considerate text. We're going to look at some examples of that. Then we're going to look at some of the built-in components that TCI has that support content literacy, and then also some of the supplemental toolkits that I think are kind of a well-kept secret, and I want to share them with you so that you can use them to enhance not only your social studies instruction, but everything you do. Okay, so if you are an elementary teacher, you might be familiar with Scarborough's rope. If you're a middle school or a secondary teacher, maybe not, but you can Google it. There are copyright restrictions, so we couldn't show the image. You can absolutely Google it, but imagine a big rope. And at the right, it's all coiled together with all the threads coming together to make a skilled reader. And the left side of it, it's kind of broken down into its different components. And there are two large strands. One of them is the word recognition strand. And that includes decoding, phonological awareness, which is the ability to hear the sounds that those little squiggles on the page make. It's a precursor to phonics, and sight recognition. At the older grades, the word recognition comes into play with morphology and looking at word parts that not only is part of decoding, but also part of vocabulary knowledge. So we're not here today to talk about the word recognition part, but I want you to be aware of that. The other half of the rope is the language comprehension strands. And here's the thing, if you've heard about the science of reading, it seems like there's been a lot of attention paid to the word recognition with good reason, but it's only half of the story. Every bit as important as decoding is the language comprehension portion. And that includes vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge, literacy structure, how language works, literacy knowledge, and verbal reasoning. And that's really what we're going to talk about and focus on today with, uh, with what we're doing. Um, when you're teaching social studies, it's definitely about the content, but the content literacy helps to build that background knowledge. And it's a perfect opportunity, even at the younger grades, to help students become more aware of how that textbook works or that passage works, what informational text is. And I do want to add one more thing. Scarborough's rope is it's over 20 years old. Like it's a very well respected, well researched model that has really stood up to the test of time. However, there is one component that Hollis Scarborough herself says, ugh, I wish I had added this. And as we do more research with literacy, we know that it is absolutely vital. Does anyone know what that is? What's missing from this?
I'm keeping my eye on the chat. I will make sure to call out the first person that throws it in there.
And if you don't know, it's okay. I'm just going to give it a couple seconds. The missing component is oral literacy. Inference would go along with verbal reasoning. Samantha, you're absolutely right, but that would be part of verbal reasoning. Home support, oh yeah, that's important, but we only have control over what we have control over. The missing component is oral literacy. Before kids can really understand what they're reading, before they can write effectively, they have to be able to discuss it, that discourse piece. And there's never enough time in the day, right? So often we want to rush these discussions and we feel like we don't have time to talk. But the thing is, it's really, really, really vitally important. So, oral literacy is the extra strand that helps make a skilled reader. And don't ever feel guilty about taking time to have classroom discussions. So, we're going to focus on that language comprehension piece, but I want to show you another model with literacy that Joan Sedita based on the reading rope, but we know that reading and writing are reciprocal. If you're a skilled reader, you're probably a decent writer. And if you're a good writer, you can't be a good writer without being a skilled reader. Each one makes the other one stronger. So Joan Sedita put together this theory. Again, you can Google the image, but it's another rope, and there are 5 strands that go into it. One is the critical thinking, and so that would be generating ideas, the writing process itself. Syntax is how language works, what sounds right. So it's the grammar, the punctuation, the sentence elaboration. I'm going to skip over text structure for just a moment to talk about writing craft. Writing craft would be word choice, choosing just the right word to convey the meaning you want. It would also be writing to a specific audience because you adjust how you write for your audience. and also any kind of literary devices like onomatopoeia or whatever. So that's writing craft. Transcription is how you're conveying the thought. So it's definitely handwriting or keyboarding, um, but also spelling skills. Amanda, it says at the top, it was Joan Sedita. She is absolutely brilliant. And she came up with this model of the writing rope. So the one that we skipped over was text structure. And that includes is the passage narrative, informational, or opinion. It's the paragraph structure. How is the writer grouping information into a paragraph that all goes together and that makes sense? It's the patterns of organization. What is the author's purpose? Is it description, sequence, cause and effect, etc.? And then also signal and transition words. And we'll talk more about signal and transition words in a couple slides, but they're really important. When you read, first of all, that's a signal. You know that there's going to be more than one example or reason or whatever. When you read so, that means that something has caused an effect. So it's cause and effect. And the more kids can be aware of them in their reading, the more they can purposely use them in their writing. So we're going to take a look at that as well. Why are these things important? Well, these are the college and career readiness standards for reading, and these are K-5. There are more standards that build with upper grades, but at K-5, these are the important standards. And if you take a look at them, you'll notice, analyze how and why individuals or events or ideas develop and interact over the course of a text. I always said to my kids, when we read, we're going to put a little writer on our shoulder. So analyzing text for what did the writer do? What choices did they make? How did they develop those ideas over time? And when we write, we want to put a reader on our shoulder and take a look at what we're writing through the eyes of a reader. Notice also, number 5, analyze the structure of texts, including how specific sentences or paragraphs or larger portions, how they relate to each other in the whole. What else are you noticing here that relates to either the reading rope and or the writing rope? What do you see in the college and career readiness? And Kelsey, I'm seeing a question down. Do the participants receive the slides from this?
We don't typically share the slides. I was just typing in here, but we will share the recordings after the fact. So they will get this to be able to do it, to be able to dive in deeper to these as well. Absolutely.
Thank you. Anything else that jumps out at you as you look at these K-5 standards? Integration of knowledge and ideas. Yeah, it pulls everything together. Okay, so this is nationwide, the college and career readiness. Let's take a look at one state. So these are the Florida second grade standards, or a portion of them, obviously. And you'll notice that at second grade in Florida, students are asked to identify the main topic of a multi-paragraph text, that's at second grade, and describe the connection between a series of events or ideas or concepts or steps. What else do you notice in second grade? So, two things. This is Florida, but I guarantee that your state has similar standards and similar expectations even at second grade. There are similar standards for first grade. Every grade builds, obviously. And if you're at a higher grade, the expectations are higher than this. Anything that you're noticing with these Florida standards for second grade that jumps out? Text features, for sure. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't pay any attention to that through most of my career. When we know better, we do better. Every state has similar standards for sure. Yeah. All right. So this is a first grade text from TCI. And I want to point out a couple of things. We'll talk more about the reading tools. Hopefully, you're familiar with those. But just in terms of text, TCI is very proud of what they call considerate text. Here's what that means. You'll notice that it's one column of text, and that's true pretty much throughout the grade levels. Obviously, the text gets more sophisticated, but the page is laid out very simply. There's one, sometimes there might be two images that directly support the content on the page. And even at first grade, there's a subheading or a subtitle. What I have noticed with my kids, even at middle school, is they don't pay attention to those headings or subtitles. They just jump right into the text. And they don't realize that the text features, the illustrations, the maps, the captions are there to support the text. So I love that about TCI, that the considerate text and how easy it is for students to make sense of it without being overwhelmed by the page. Uh, Another thing about considerate text, this is pretty much written at a late first grade level. Now, that doesn't mean that every kid can decode it, let alone comprehend it, but I love that TCI textbooks are written at grade level. And at the older grades, or in most grades, you can actually adjust the level and even bring it down to a lower Lexile and decrease the complexity of it by 20%. So I love that about TCI text. So this is called What is a Good? And it's literally describing what is a good, how do you get it? And I love that the last question is, what goods can you find in the picture? So pretend you're a well behaved first grader. What goods do you notice in the picture that could be part of that oral language, part of that discussion? What goods do you notice in the image? Books, crayons, books, paper for sure. Yep. Chairs, furniture. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even at first grade, um, as you're talking about the content, you could totally point out the heading and how it tells us exactly what you're going to read. And by the way, the author's purpose for this particular passage is just to describe. It's just describing what is a good. And then the image really supports that. So, a great opportunity, even at first grade, to start building some of that language structure and how informational text works. So I brought a gift for you today. You can use the code that's on here, and also Kelsey is going to drop it into the chat. I referred to this as the best friend. A teaching partner and I developed it when I was teaching a sixth grade content literacy class. And I called it the best friend because my kids used it every single day, both for reading and for writing. So it is really about informational text. You can see on the left, it has the different text structures as well as a graphic organizer. And the way I use those graphic organizers, I would have the kids use them to guide in what information was really important. We have kids take notes, but they don't know what's important, right? And I found that those graphic organizers really help them focus in on what is the important information so that they can pull it out and make notes. Um, in the middle is the purpose. So often, an author's purpose, like in the passage that we just saw, is just to describe. But often you'll find, if you really look at it and analyze it, an author is going to describe, for instance, what is a volcano, What is a volcano? Before they get into what causes a volcano and the effects of of a volcano. And then in some passages, the author's ultimate purpose, after describing and explaining the cause and the effects of a volcano, maybe it's the problem and solution. So a problem will often include the cause and effect, but what sets it apart is that there are steps taken to achieve a desired solution. So, in a passage about a volcano, you might start with what is it? What causes it? What are the effects? But the ultimate purpose is, what do emergency workers do? What steps do they take to rescue and help people after a volcano? So, in one single passage, there may be multiple different structures, but it really comes down to what is the author's purpose. And the headings and the text features can really help determine that and be able to pull out the information. I would also have kids use those graphic organizers then to help plan specifically what is their purpose and what do they want to write. And then the last column is examples of some of those signal and transition words. So, for instance, sequence and timeline would definitely be ordinal numbers, first, second, third. It might be after that, or next, or at the same time, finally. Compare and contrast might be like or unlike, or however. My favorite is the but. And I taught sixth grade when I developed this. So, middle school humor, but I would tell my kids every time you see but, it should stick out. That big fat butt should stick out, which of course caught their attention. It made them laugh uproariously, but it stuck with them. And I would follow that with that big fat butt should stick out because but always shows change or difference, how something is different or how it's changed. The other thing about these signal and transition words is we think of them for informational text, and I would have kids highlight them or circle them, and we'd really analyze them. I really wanted them to be on kids' radar because, again, they really help to pull out what is the author saying. But there's a lot of overlap. You find a lot of these in narrative text as well. As you take a look at the signal words, can you pick out any that could be picked out and noticed in narrative text? Yeah, Samantha, that big fat butt also often does tell the author's main point. Mm, yeah, finally is a narrative for sure. Couple more. Because is one. You see because all the time, and it shows cause and effect. So I used the best friend all the time, and I really wanted my kids to become so familiar with it that they used it as a resource, both for reading and for writing. Mostly with informational text, but there's definitely carryover to narrative as well. All right, so let's take a look at another passage from TCI. So this is, I think, a second grade text, right? My tools are kind of blocking a little bit. Oh, third grade, Our Community and Beyond. Third grade text. So you'll notice that it's a little more sophisticated than that first grade text. You'll notice there are two images, but they directly support the content. And you'll also notice I went ahead and highlighted some of those signal and transition words. The first grade text really didn't have a lot of them, and you'll notice that too. As the grade levels move up, the text becomes more sophisticated, and so there is more usage of signal and transition words. So, going to public meetings, one way to have a voice in your community. It's not the only way, it's one way. Before making decisions, leaders want to know what people think. For instance, shows an example, and I love the one at the bottom. It's one of my favorites. If this, then that. So as you take a look, a lot of signal and transition words, what are your thoughts about what text structure this would be? What is the author's purpose here overall? And I'm just going to give you a couple minutes. If you're not sure, that is okay. You know what? Going to public meetings is one way to solve a problem for sure. I can see why you would say that. hmm Describing what a public meeting is. That's the one that I would go with, but it's not always completely cut and dried. Yeah, cause and effect. What are the effects of going to a public meeting? So, again, you could even kind of debate it and come up with some evidence for your thinking. Okay. So, this is a fourth grade science text. And I want to point out a couple things. Again, that considerate text. There's the heading. The information is definitely more sophisticated, more complex, but there's still one image that supports the content. And this would be a great place for a fourth grade teacher while you're teaching the content to just point out. Notice how the first paragraph is just giving you a scenario. Soccer practice, what happens? A rolling ball hits a still one, and a curious thing happens. So it's setting up a scenario. And then the second paragraph explains the science behind it. And the third paragraph is kind of a summary. So, because of the collision, the speeds of both of the balls changed, and so did their energy. However, compare contrast, the total amount of energy did not change. So I don't know. What do you think? Is this describing how energy is transferred and conserved, or is it more of a cause and effect? What do you think? Definitely both. Yeah, definitely both. But I think the author's real purpose is to show that cause and effect, how energy is transferred. All right. So some of the tools, and our tools keep changing and growing all the time. I love them. You will find, no matter the grade level, it can always be read aloud to the students. Again, with most grade levels, you can even adjust the Lexile level. And now a new tool is to be able to slow it down. So if you have students for whom it just takes a little longer to have that listening processing, you can slow it down so that the speech is a little bit slower. I love the main idea. Often I would put a passage up from TCI. We would look at the signal words, we would look at the heading, um, and then we would kind of determine the author's purpose. And then, okay, guys, what do we think are the main ideas? And I would use the highlighting tool to determine what we think, and then click on the main idea to see if we were correct or not. Again, maybe you don't do that every day, but even if every teacher did that once or twice a week, imagine how much better our students would be at main idea and supporting details, because that is a kindergarten, first grade for sure standard, and kids in middle school and high school still tend to struggle with it, right? So what a great opportunity while you're teaching the content to also practice some of that content literacy. All right. We're going to take a look um at a couple of actually I'm just looking at the time. I think what we're going to do is
You're good on time, Julie.
okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So, when you teach TCI, you always, always, always want to go to the classroom activity slideshow for the meat of the lesson. That's where the magic really happens. But today we're talking about content literacy. So I am just going to go to the textbook, and we're just going to take a quick look. So this particular lesson is What Do Good Neighbors Do? And usually the first page is just a very quick introduction. And hold on, I'm having trouble finding all my little buttons. There we go. And then if we go to the next section, you'll notice again at first grade, you don't see a whole lot of signal and transition words, but the subtitle is Neighbors are the people who live and work near you. What do you think in terms of text structure? What's the author's purpose here? Just to describe or going beyond it to have another purpose? Just giving everyone a moment to think about it, to read it. Yeah, I think it's really just to describe. Going to the next section, another example of how good neighbors help each other. hmm I also love how these sections end with a question. So again, TCI really builds in not only the text learning, but also that oral literacy, having those discussions, because that's really how kids are engaged and how they learn. We're going to look at one more section for first grade. This one I'd say is again description, how good neighbors help each other. Let's see if they stick with that with the next one. Good neighbors take care of their neighborhood. Did it go beyond description, or is this section too really pretty much description? It really is just description, isn't it? That's really the focus. Yeah, exactly. Describing to support that discussion. It again ends with a question. Yeah. And the more you as a teacher are aware of this, the more you can build on it, point things out, or have those discussions. Let's go to another grade level. So now we're going to go to a third grade section. Once again, I'm going to skip the classroom activity slideshow. We're going to go straight to reading. And this lesson is citizenship and participation. And the guiding question for this whole chapter, for this whole lesson, is how do we have a voice in our community? So the introduction kind of describes some of the pieces of that. And then let's look at a couple sections. So here's people choose our leaders. Notice third grade, definitely more sophisticated. Notice two images that support. So as you look at this, first of all, do you see any signal and transition words that jump out at you? One that I'm noticing is this when, which is kind of like if, when one thing, then, and it doesn't say then, but it's separated by a comma. When this happens, when members of the government are chosen, then they represent the people who elected them to office. So a really great thing to point out to students. Yeah, but most importantly, now, exactly. People choose our leaders. So let's take a quick look how they group the information in the paragraphs. United States government is a republic. Where does it get its power? How are members chosen? Or what happens when they are chosen, I should say. And then how they are chosen, and that's voting, right? And then how can voters, citizens, be knowledgeable enough to make their vote count? So what would you say is the text structure of this? What is the author's purpose? Any thoughts? Description, describing how people choose our leaders. Anyone have a different idea? It's definitely to inform. It's informational. Yeah. Oh, sequence. Um, there's a little bit of sequence just in terms of knowing the information before you vote. Um, what happens after leaders are chosen. Yeah, just a bit of sequence, but I think the author's real purpose here, and again, we could have a discourse about it. I think the author's real purpose here is to describe the process, yeah, and what leaders do. Exactly. I want to go to one more section. I'm going to go to 5. Actually, I can do it this way, except I have all these tools in the way. I'm going to go to 5. Okay. So section 5 is voting. Voting is the best way to have a voice in your community. Again, I'm hoping you're noticing that simple, considerate text, the images support, the heading, the vocabulary words. Initially, only certain people could vote. Still some rules. You have to be 18. You have to be a citizen. You have to register. How people vote, they mark a ballot. Do you see how the information is grouped in paragraphs and how it would take 30 seconds to point that out to students? But being a better reader at it makes you a better writer, and knowing how to group information into paragraphs. Another way that people vote, and leaders make the decisions, but the election is how every voter helps to choose the ideas and the candidates. So what do you think? What's the author's purpose? Is it just to describe, or is there a different purpose? Definitely to inform. Yep, this is informational text without a doubt. It's not trying to convince anyone. I would say it's describing the voting process, how it started, how it's changed, what you have to do to be able to vote, and it ends with kind of the effects of voting. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back. Let's go to the next slide. And now we're going to take a look at a science text. How are we doing on time? Still
We're
doing
doing
okay.
good. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, you're doing good.
We are going to skip the slideshow for now because we are talking about considerate text. So we're going to go to the reading. And this chapter is How is Energy Transferred by Colliding Objects? So just looking at the title of this particular lesson, what's the author's purpose here? There will definitely be some description, but does the title of the chapter itself, or the lesson, sorry, indicate a different purpose, an ultimate purpose? It is to inform, without a doubt. Any informational text is going to inform. But when you think about the text structure, describe, or description, sequence, cause and effect, problem solution, opinion or argument. Yeah, yeah. How is energy transferred by colliding objects? So pointing that out at the very beginning, guys, that's what we're going to be reading about. And then it's going to give different examples of that. Is the reading text in the student notebooks too, or only in the digital form? Yeah, it is also in the student notebooks. I really like putting, again, even if kids can decode it because it is at grade level, doesn't mean they can comprehend it. So I love putting it up on the screen and at least starting to read it together to point out some things to kind of push them in the right direction. Even, okay, let's read this first section together about energy being transferred, not the introduction, but we'll go to the first one. This is the one we talked about earlier, right? Talking about this, and then maybe on the second one, giving students a chance to read it with a partner, notice the signal and transition words, notice how, ooh, in this one, notice that there are multiple headings, right? So, what a great opportunity either to do it together or to point them in the direction, have them do it with a partner, and come back and talk about it. It takes a couple of extra minutes, but holy cow, so much bang for the buck. And as kids start to really know how to read informational text, it gives them tools and power so they can start to do it more on their own. Any thoughts as you look at this text? Anything that's jumping out? Any takeaways? All right. So I want to make sure that we have enough time. Yeah, the importance of headings, truly. And kids don't realize that unless they are taught how much the headings can help them. So I want to take a quick moment. In any program you have, under the support button, there is a section called toolkits. So I'm going to go live. This is that fourth grade lesson. I'm under support. Here are all these toolkits, right? And if I look at skills and toolkits, here is the English language arts. There are reading skills, writing skills, speaking and listening, and vocabulary. If you haven't looked at those before, I would highly encourage you because there is a wealth here. It's under support and then toolkits. So here's the reading toolkit, and you'll notice, so these are some of the examples, lots and lots of ideas, and then all these great graphic organizers that you can use in so many ways. Sequence chain, where could you use that besides in science? You could use it in ELA, couldn't you? Sometimes you might even be able to use it in math. So I encourage you to take a look at those toolkits. They are just a wealth of information. And then we are almost out of time. So, Kelsey, do you want to talk quickly? Oh, so these are the next sessions, and I just want to say, Kelsey and I will also be doing the visual discovery session together if you are so
Yeah.
inclined. But holy cow, such a wealth of great information in all the upcoming sessions.
Absolutely. You'll see in there we've got some top classroom investigations using primary sources, building a positive classroom environment, CER writing, using inquiry projects to drive student learning, top classroom activities, video activities, so many things
So many
that are
things.
just going to be great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. And I'm hoping that you found a couple nuggets that you can take away and use in the upcoming year.
Absolutely. Do you want to go to the next? I was going to say there's a couple different more on here, Julie, that we can talk through.
Sure.
To just the make sure you get in there, check out our PD courses, join our Facebook group, follow us on our socials at Teach TCI on Facebook and on Instagram. We would love you so much to join that and to do that. Yes, I am going to throw in the link to the chat for our next sessions here just a moment. So we can grab this one so you can go back into the lobby. I'm gonna throw this in the chat here. Do, 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 do. There we go. Boom. Go back to our session. Thank you so much, Jamie, Francine, Laura, Teresa, Christina. I'm just looking through our Virginia. Thank you for all of you for joining. We would love to have you continue on in our last session of the day today. So click on that link there in the chat to get you into our next sessions. And if you go, Julie, to the next slide here, keep going here. We'll do one more. Keep going. I lied. One more. Oh, not this one either. One
I'm going
more.
to go
Keep
back.
going. No, no, this one's fine. We'll just leave this here. We'd love for you to also just share one thing that you learned today using the hashtag TCI Summit 25 for a chance to win a gift card and a llama for your classroom. So go ahead and do that. Grab that link in the chat to join us for our other sessions for later today. And we may see you in our next
In a
session
few minutes.
in a few minutes. All right. See
Thanks
ya,
all.
everybody.